Good morning. I have a question for you. Do you have a personal brand? The answer should be yes. Yes, we all have a personal brand. You have a personal brand. I have a personal brand. We all do. But the question is, have you developed that personal brand into something maybe different than your business branding? So I'm super excited to talk about this topic today. I was doing some research myself on personal branding, and I came across the first article actually on Forbes.com that mentioned how Oprah had some trouble branding herself at the very beginning. And now look at her. She's huge. She's one of the biggest voices that we know. And I just think that that's a great testament to the fact that anybody can be excellent at branding themselves personally. And today we're going to take the opportunity to learn more about personal branding, how that differentiates, answer some questions. So I'm super excited. I invited my friend, Dr. G. She is here. She is an expert on many things, including digital media and personal branding. She's also a professor, and I cannot wait to bring her on. I will in just a second. And I just feel like with this month, and with writing is such an important topic. I dedicated the entire month of June to writing because as entrepreneurs, that is our existence, is the content that we put out into the world. It is the source of our newsletters. We need to write email marketing letters. We need to write blog posts. We have content in our trainings, and maybe even like writing a book. Have you ever considered writing a book? I mean, that's a huge undertaking, but that requires, of course, writing and that skill. So we need to make sure that we're keeping those writing skills on track. And that's why I wanted to bring on coaches that specialize in writing. So I'm super excited to have Dr. G on with us today. So I'm going to bring her on right now.
Hi.
Hello, I'm so glad to have you here to share your brilliance and your expertise with us. But first of all, I just touched on your experience, and you have a breadth of experience. I want you to share with us more about you.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Amy, for inviting me onto your show. I really appreciate it. I never take it for granted. So my name is Gertrude Nonterah, and I have a very, very interesting background. So I have degrees in biology and nursing. I do have a PhD in microbiology and immunology. And currently I'm an adjunct professor at one of the local colleges here in San Diego. But one of the things that gives me the most joy is my ability to essentially connect with thousands of people around the world through content. Back in 2011, 2012, I discovered the world of blogging. I jumped into it. I haven't looked back. These days, I don't blog as much as I want to, but I do create YouTube videos. I'm very active on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I am always amazed that just doing that has allowed me to get business, allowed people to pay me, right, who have never seen my face, who have never met me, just by me creating content. And that just speaks to the power of content marketing and personal branding. And I think Amy and I are going to be talking a lot about that today. So thanks for having me, Amy.
Oh, I'm so excited that you're here. We just talked about this earlier. We've run into each other a couple different times over the last couple of years. So it's fun to actually have you on here and learn more about you, of course, too. So I'm just super excited that you're here. Yeah. So before we get into our personal branding, as we're on social media and we're experiencing, the Black Lives Matter movement, and we see it happen all over around us. I wanted to hear a little bit about you and your perspective on things, if you could share that with us.
Yeah. So, as a Black woman, it's been, and as a Black woman who is married to a Black man and has a Black child, it's been a very emotional week for me. Because in all the stories, I see my husband, I see my son, I see myself, right? And I just keep thinking it could have happened to any one of us. And Thank God we're still all here and nothing like that has happened, but it's still hard to dissociate yourself from that. So it has been an emotional week. And I think that my biggest thing is first of all, there are different ways of being an activist. Not everybody is gonna go into the streets and protest, or not everybody is gonna sign petitions. But I think one of the biggest things for me, something that's really dear to my heart, is that people examine their own hearts, right? In how you look at somebody, and in the first impressions you have of people, and what your thought process is when you meet someone. Not to and not to pontificate, but my whole heart on this is not to just put a group of people in one little bucket that you have, or that you were taught that this is how all these people are. For instance, I was sharing with Amy just before this broadcast that it would be unfair of me to say all white women were a certain way, right? It would be totally unfair, because there are billions of white women, and it would just be unfair for me to put each one of them, with their varied experiences, varied backgrounds, varied socioeconomic statuses, to put all of them into one bucket. And so, that's just my appeal, is on a personal level. I mean, I'm sure with all the protests going on, with all the anger, is also, I think, something good may come out of that, and we may see policy changes. But beyond that, I think on an everyday personal level, it's important to examine your own prejudices. And I've also been challenged to look at my own prejudices, right? And really to begin to see people as, okay, I'm going to take this person for who they are and what they can bring to the table, and not just prejudge them, which unfortunately I think has happened in a lot of these cases. With there was obviously some kind of mindset that the person had there, that unfortunately led to somebody's killing, or somebody's getting hurt, or whatever. So examine your heart on a personal level. That's my message.
That's beautiful. And I really appreciate you mentioning that, because I was the same way. I think that, we all have our own ability to really examine ourselves at this point. And that's where it starts. It starts in the home, it starts with our families, and it starts with us. And that creates a ripple effect across the world. I mean, anything that we can do internally and individually to change things like that. So I thank you for that perspective. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So getting into, personal branding, and, this is just one aspect of what you do, but it's definitely the most, like we talked about, kind of the publicized aspect of your work. Personal branding, we all, this show is geared towards entrepreneurs and, coaches that have their own business, and they have their business, and then they have their brand. So how do you differentiate? Where is the differentiation between personal branding and business branding?
Right. So definitely business branding, and I feel they can be different, and they could also be the same. And this is what I mean. So with business branding, it could be, for instance, you decide that, because I'm the person and I decide to start a t-shirt company, right? I don't necessarily have to put my face on that t-shirt company. I could advertise that business as its own business brand. There's a product people will buy. There's a direct product that people will engage, right? So that's business branding, right? So you can think about all the big business brands in the world: McDonald's, Walmart, Target. These are larger than life business brands. We don't put a specific face to it. We just think Walmart, and then there's a kind of thought that comes to your mind. You think McDonald's, there's a kind of thought that comes to your mind. You think Target, there's a kind of thought that comes into your mind. That's business branding, when you are actually engaging the specific product or business, right? And then there's the personal brand. And personal brand is exactly what it sounds like. This is where the person, me, right, even though I may have been the founder of that t-shirt company, now I could also have a brand where people begin to engage me, and through engaging me may find out about my businesses, right, or business. So for instance, I know that the T-Mobile CEO who just left, I think he just handed over or something. Anyway, he had his own personal brand. He had his own very strong personal brand. I think his name was Tom Leger. He had his own personal brand where it was separate from T-Mobile. But still, because he engaged so many people on social media with his quirky behavior, people fell in love with him. But also, it ended up becoming profitable or helpful for awareness and for brand equity in the minds of people for T-Mobile. So that's how I always differentiate business branding versus personal branding. Personal brand is you. And through you, people can find out about your business. Business branding, people are engaging the product that they will eventually exchange money for. So that's, and then the way I said that they could be different or the same. So the way I say it could be the same is when people get to know you as a personal brand, through that personal brand, they will also get to know your businesses or your business or the product that you sell. But it usually starts with you as the person. So that's how it becomes, it can merge, but it can also be separate.
Well, exactly. And like you said, it can be personal brands can be many businesses. So that's, it's opposed to just you're branding one business as opposed to you're branding yourself. And it could go in multiple different directions. I'm sure there's lots of different, there's lots of examples of that. And very successful people, of course, do that. So when we're talking about personal branding and we want to start, jumping into this, really getting clear on how we want to brand ourselves, where would we start? Like, how would one go about branding themselves?
Right. So whether you think it or not, whether you believe it or not, you do have a personal brand.
Yeah.
It's just that, I think that these days, people associate building a personal brand with having a social media presence. And definitely that's a large part of it, but it's not all of it, right? There are people that have built massive personal brands just by speaking on stages around the world, and they don't have much of a social media presence. They just are known in the speaking world. There are people that have a personal brand in a particular sport, right? And you may not know about them because they're out there on the field building that personal brand. So personal branding doesn't have to be on social media. But since we are on a social media show, okay, social media, and I think most of the people that listen to would be listeners of your show, Amy, are people who are interested in leveraging social media, right? So yes, so definitely you can use social media to build your brand. However, going back to your first question about business branding versus personal branding, personally, I think that it is fruitless to start building a personal brand without thinking about where exactly is this going and how is this going to benefit me. Because you can post on social media all day. And I've made this mistake, which is why I'm saying this. You can post on social media all day with like beautiful graphics and catchy captions and have people liking it. But to be honest, likes don't pay the bills. So I think that you should have a business objective, a profit objective, maybe a profit objective tied to the personal brand that you're building on social media. So that's the first thing. When you're going to get started, think about what exactly am I selling? Like, what is
your goal?
What is the goal? What is the goal of this? I do believe that every piece of content that I post is either content that builds brand awareness or content that directs people to my paid products. Like this is how I see the world. It's like black and white. I will throw in some personal stuff about me personally, and I usually use Instagram stories for that. I'll get to that. But for sure, you want to have a profit objective tied to that. So that's the first thing. So now that you decide that there's somehow there's going to be a profit objective tied to your personal brand, I want you to think about really, if especially for business owners, I want you to really think about what you want to be known for. Or what you want to brand yourself for. Like I was saying earlier on, when you think about Target, there's a kind of feeling you get. There's a kind of sense that you get. When you think about Walmart, there's a different feeling.
Yeah.
When you think about any of your favorite restaurants that are a chain restaurant, you get a different sense of what you're going to expect. When you go in there, you know what you could expect because it's a brand that has been built. So you really want to think about, what do you want people to come to know you for? So using myself as an example, I started out with different things, but in the last 2 years, I've really have worked on branding myself as somebody, the go-to person for writing and for using, for basically writing and leveraging writing to build your brand, content creation, freelance writing, and then using social media to do that. So when people come to me, very few people are asking me about their mental health. Very few people are asking me even about my biology degree. Like, nobody's asking me about that. People are asking me, I want to write, I want to blog, I want to write a book. How do I do that? Right? Because for the last 2 years, I've been very, very consistent and intentional in putting out content, in writing in a way, in developing products that are that are writing centric. So I really do think that you need, and I think if there are coaches watching this, you probably know this already, that you coach people in a particular industry. What do you want to be known for in that industry, right? And then once you decide what you want to be known for in that industry, create content to that effect and continue to create content to that effect. So apart from content creation, the other thing, the number two thing you can do to build a really strong personal brand, or to get started building a strong personal brand, is to consider collaborating with other people. Right? Consider collaborating with other people in your industry, because especially when you get started, nobody knows you, right? Nobody knows you. But if you get on Amy's show or you get on somebody's podcast, then you begin to be known by people for a specific subject. So go find those people in your industry that are doing something similar, or something that overlaps, or something that has a subset of your audience. And sometimes they invite you on, sometimes you have to reach out. So I would say these two things, deciding what you want to be known for and creating content to that effect, and then following that up with collaborating with others to create content beyond podcasts, so on and so forth, so that people get to know who you are.
That's perfect. Yeah, definitely. I credit my friend Stephanie Liu with this. When I ask her for advice all the time. I don't know if you know Stephanie Liu. She's all over the place with her, live video knowledge and just helping everybody.
Yeah.
She helped me figure out how to start this show. So
Right.
I lean on her with a lot of advice. And sometimes I'll just ask her questions, and the first question she asked me, "What is your goal?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." So that's like ingrained in me now. Whenever I'm going to do something, whenever I'm trying to I want to develop a program or do something, it's what is your goal? What are you after? Because you don't know what you're going to get to if you don't know if you've achieved it, unless you set ahead of time what you plan to do. What is that end goal? So that's excellent advice. We definitely don't want to go into any type of content marketing blindly. We want to have a clear path of where we need to be. So that's awesome. So what, in your expertise with writing in all forms, what do you believe is the strongest, the most profitable, maybe just like the most, if we could put our energy into one type of writing to leverage our personal brand, what would that be?
That's such a good question, and it's nuanced. The answer is nuanced.
All the above and none at the same time, right?
Yes. So I'll try my best to answer it. Okay, so I think if you're going to use social media, then social media writing is the best kind of writing you can invest in. And social media copywriting, not just writing, because you can write and it doesn't move anybody to action, or you could write and it could move people to action. Okay. So I think that's really important to realize. And like you said, Amy, like, what's the goal, right? Are you trying to get people on your email list? Are you trying to get people to sign up for your group coaching? Are you trying to get people to do one-on-one coaching with you? So all the content that you're putting out there has to have that goal, and also has to be in the language that is going to appeal to that specific audience and bring them in, which is why copywriting is going to be important. So I would say that invest in learning how to write good copy, like master that art. And if you learn how to write good copy, then you can use it on social media, which is where most of us will be doing this. But you can also use it in emails. You can also use it on blogs. You can also use it even if you end up creating videos. Your copywriting is the copy that you have as the title of the video is what's going to get people to watch the video. So if there's any profitable type of writing, I would say that invest in learning how to write good copy. And it's copywriting is really like a whole 3-day seminar, but you can learn some good practices of good copy and utilize that. But I'd say if you're trying to build your personal brand in 2020, I think social media is a great place for you to start building that. But you have to write in such a way that it appeals, to write in such a way that it gets people to move to action. So invest in learning how to write copy and then use that in all the places, okay? Because it's going to become important, even if you write books. So whatever type of writing you do, copywriting is going to be foundational to that, right?
Definitely.
And if you can master that, then it doesn't matter which platform you use, because you are going to be profitable. But I think social media is super powerful. But that's why I said it was nuanced, because I feel like if you can master good copy, you can win on any type of platform.
Definitely. That makes sense for sure, because you're developing that specific skill, and that skill set can be easily transferable to all the different places that we need to write as an entrepreneur.
That's
definitely.
Right.
So what is a couple of your favorite resources that you like when you started, your journey in copywriting and things? What were your places that you go to?
Yes, places that I love. So there is a blog that has been around for maybe almost 20 years. It's called copyblogger.com. They've been around for a while. So Copyblogger, I would check out their blog. They have really good content. There are also a few books. There is a book called Cashvertising, and I'll check on here because I have a list. So Cashvertising is good, so you can check that book out. There is a book, How to Write Good Copy, but I think it's by Ray Edwards. He makes it really, really simple to understand what copywriting is. Another person that writes really good copy is Ramit Sethi of IWillTeachYouToBeRich.com. And you can learn a lot about copywriting just by signing up for his emails. He does send multiple emails a week, though. So if you are annoyed by emails in your inbox all the time, then it's going to be a little annoying. But he is so good with the copy he writes. And one of the things I personally learned from him was, and so really, as you can tell, I really learn copy by learning from how other people write copy, right? Is learning the biggest copywriting tip is learning who your audience is and talking to them. So for instance, let me try to find an example. If I was writing to a primarily medical audience, right? An audience that was like highly technical, really intelligent, and everybody's intelligent, but just saying like this group of people tend to be, use jargon that most people don't use every day, right? The way I may write to them may be slightly different from, let's say, a group of entrepreneurs who are trying. So let's say a group of medical professionals trying to, if I had a business that helped people get into medical school, right? Let's use that as an example. And then I had a group of people who were trying to write books. 2 different languages, 2 different mindsets. And so I would come from the mindset of the person. I'd write it from the mindset of the person. One of the biggest copywriting tips I learned is, after you learn who your audience is and what language they speak, interrupt the conversation going on in their heads. So what conversation are they having in their head? They're thinking, let's say these medical students who want to go to med school are thinking this MCAT, which is an exam that medical students take before they get to med school, is so hard. There's no way I can do this. Interrupt that thought. They have that thought, so you interrupt it. So really, it comes down to knowing who your audience is. But Copy Blogger is a good resource. Everything they recommend, I highly endorse. Cashvertising is a good one. The copy, How to Write Good Copy by Ray Edwards is a good one. And definitely, if you can sign up for my Meet Sadie's email list,
what was the name of that one again? What website was it?
Yeah, it's iwillteachyoutoberich.com. Yeah, I will teach you to be rich.com. Yeah. He also writes really good copy. So just by learning from these resources, that's how, and then learning who my audience is. So every time I speak, what I said to you, every time I speak to my audience, oh my goodness, if they respond, there's a huge response because I'm speaking their language and I'm interrupting their thoughts. When I just post something willy-nilly without thinking about what my audience is thinking about, it falls flat. So it's really important that you get to know those conversations. And probably the next question is, so how do you get to know what they're saying, G? Well, I mean, you'll get feedback. You can always ask for it. You can always ask, like, what's your biggest thing? What's standing in your way? What what's the most difficult thing about doing whatever it is you're into, right? And then once you hear what they say and the language they use, then you can use that language back to them. So I say ask, you shall receive.
That's a great way to do it. I think some people are afraid to ask, like they're not sure if, they should be asking, but that's your best resource because ultimately you're going to be answering questions and things like that they have and one interesting thing about that topic too is, especially when you're talking to somebody that doesn't have a frame of reference of your specific expertise, they're going to use different words. They're going to different phrases, different words. So I could be talking about, social media, Instagram stories and hashtags and all this kind of stuff. Someone doesn't understand what that is, or they have a different word for it. They want to say tag instead of a hashtag or something. It's something similar, but they don't have the right questions or they don't have the right frame of reference to be able to ask the right questions. So it's better to ask them instead of just assuming that we know.
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
Angela's here. Oh, thanks for being here, Angela. She says, great tip, listen to your audience and ask for what they need or want.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. You should. You really should. And then sometimes too, like even when your audience is smaller or you don't have an audience at all, you could also kind of go find people that do something similar to you, right? Like we all know people that do something similar to us, right? Go find them. Those people probably have an audience. Go find them and listen to the questions that are being asked there. That's how I started out. Like I listened to questions that other people were asking, and I'd answer in other people's communities, and I'd answer those questions, in my own way, on the way that I knew best. And that's how I started building an audience personally. And it ended up working up well. And of course, as you go, you can fine tune things because then you'll learn what your audience really wants once it grows bigger. But when you're just starting and it's like 0 followers, we all start at 0, go find somebody who is already doing what you're doing, listen to what their audience is saying and see how best you can answer those questions.
That's awesome. You just give us so much information. I'm so inspired now to really focus on my, personal brand. Up until now, of course, if you have a business, you're all in with that. And you really want to just focus on your business branding and making sure that that's clear, your target audience and all that. But then thinking about personal branding, because personal branding, like you gave in the example before of the T-Mobile CEO, personal branding goes with you. Your business branding pretty much, depending on how you develop it, stays there. So your personal branding is something that you can establish, that you can take with you wherever you go, that you have this following of loyal people that, kind of like we talked about before with people that are very successful. They, have people that are going to go follow their whatever their next business venture is, whatever
That's
the
right.
next thing that they want, because they've built that trust in that, into that person. And
Yeah.
they've done that, they've developed that over time. So
For sure.
hugely
Well,
valuable.
I love that, Amy. I love that you mentioned that, because you're absolutely right. Like, your personal brand will go everywhere with you. Whereas, the T-Mobile CEO, he left T-Mobile. He no longer represents that company. But guess what? He has a large following. And so wherever he's going to go work next, there are people going to follow him. Even if he decides not to go work with anybody and start his own business, well, guess what? He already has an audience that loves him. And some of them are just going to buy his whatever book he writes or anything, just because it's him. And not
Right.
because he was associated with T-Mobile necessarily. So I think that, we are living in an age where it is prime time for personal brands online, personal brands on social media. And, the sky is the limit, really, when it comes to that.
It really is. It's like your own personal little community of friends that you just take with you wherever you go. Like,
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
how you build that with, luckily we have, like you said, social media right now that we can do that.
Yeah.
So you've given us so much knowledge and so many things that we can use to really develop our personal brand and really understand it. I think that's the first thing in, doing anything new, is really getting to the crux of what is it we're talking about here, and then being able to get the knowledge to run with it. And I really like those resources that you recommended too, because, to develop a writing skill, I've always believed that reading is the forefront of that. If you, read, books and resources, and, look at how people are doing emails and things like that, that's going to help you develop your own skill in itself. So thank you for sharing those resources for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yay. And thank you. We've been on for 30 minutes already. This flew by like I thought it would. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free, if you're watching the replay, to keep adding them in the comments, and we'll come back to them for sure. And we'd love to know, if you decide if you're going to be focusing on your personal brand, what direction you're going to be taking it, and love to hear more about that too. So, in the Coaches Go Social, the rest of the month, we have more writing resources and coaches to share with you, and those will be announced soon. So thank you so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.